So my name is Jetson Lero. I am a student with Liberty University, School of Aeronautics. I am currently in CFI ground and to be CFI flight over here in the fall. So I am making this just kind of as a demo for myself and for the class I'm taking of a presentation of soft field takeoffs. Soft field takeoffs are just a fantastic maneuver in my opinion. They are really fun to do. Especially in the summertime, because you just get to feel kind of like a real pilot for a second, right? You get to feel that what ground effect really is. So ground effect is one of our biggest allies. So just going over a few factors of why I need to know this, right? So I mean, no one's going to go out and take a check ride and not know what a soft field takeoff is. So that would be answer A, is check ride, right? But B also is we are going to be learning that, sorry, not we, but during your career you're going to learn there are times where the airport you're coming to land at, or you want to land at, like if you want to land at your buddies or over at an event or something like that, you're not always going to have the runway, right? So you're going to have usually sometimes a grass strip, or that's all they have at their airport is a grass strip, right? And so using this gives us the ability to protect our plane, specifically our nose strut. So our nose strut, our oleo strut, is actually not as tough as you think it is. I feel like on like the Cessna 172s, they can definitely handle a beating because student pilots are definitely just landing gear test pilots and we push to the limit. But we want to protect this nose in that soft field because sometimes those grass runways can have divots in them or potholes in them or rocks or stuff like that later on the runway, that if that hits your nose strut at the right angle or the right speed or whatever it is, it could snap it. And there's actually videos out there of pilots flipping their aircraft from hitting like divots on a takeoff and not doing a soft field technique. So this technique, it's actually really easy. It is a really easy technique to not just learn, but to perform over and over and over again. Sure, like in time, it's going to come with practice, but if you can do a normal takeoff with some guidance and some coaching, a soft field it'll come into play later on, and it's not too terribly difficult. So using this, I am going to use these markers here. Fantastic, right? They might be dead. And kind of draw out of a visual. I am a huge visual learner, so like pictures that my instructor will do or they draw on the whiteboards just helped a bunch throughout like private and commercial and instrument as well. So I'm not an artist. I'm going to do my best to draw an airplane. So we'll do, that looks like a shark, but let's draw a tail wheel. Actually, no, it won't, because this is a soft field. Anyways, so that's the best I got. But this is our runway. This is our aircraft. We're taxiing out to the runway, right? So we're thinking from the very start here. So we've taxied through, or we're beginning to taxi, or whatever it may be. But in a soft field, the biggest thing to remember is we're trying to keep the pressure off of that nose strut. So the best way to do that is using our elevator. So our elevator, we can take the pressure off of that because we can use the air coming back from the prop to lift up the nose. So using that elevator fully aft, I mean, as far as you can get it. I mean, really don't do it halfway, don't do it quarter way. Like keep that thing as much as you can off of the ground. Keeping that during taxi, during takeoff, this is the key factor. So without that factor, the rest cannot fall into play. So remember, that's rule number one, is keeping, you can see this, I think you can, but it would be green because rules are good in aviation, but rules is one, yoke full aft. So keeping that yoke full aft, rule number one, right? That's going to keep the pressure up the nose. We got to remember that during this entire maneuver. So a cool part of that too is we have the thing in ground effect. So during the takeoff, that is rule number 2, is remembering ground effect, right? Rule number 2 is to stay inside ground effect. So what is ground effect, right? So I like to think of ground effect as a invisible tunnel, right? So in the books, it's a wing and a half of from your aircraft to the ground. So I picture it like this. Say I was to draw that line there. So this is the runway. This is like the top barrier for ground effect. So this tunnel here is our area to operate, our area to maneuver throughout this time. So we talked already about rule number 1 is keeping your yoke full aft and staying inside ground effect. So this, we're going to start off like a normal takeoff, right? So everything's fine. Feet are on your heels on the ground, toes on the bottom of the rudders, and you're moving out. And so from here, we have that yoke fully aft. We're pushing in throttle just like how we would normal takeoff. So the throttle's in, mixture's in forward hitch, depending on where you're at. And heels to the floor. We're coming out. And you're going to notice that on this maneuver, the aircraft is wanting to become airborne prior to like your normal rotation speed. So prior to VR, your aircraft is like, hey, I feel this nose all the way up. I want to go. So what we're going to do there is we have to worry about this zone in the takeoff. So from the area between we actually become airborne and this part where we have that yoke fully aft, this is tail strike city. So this is the number 1 maneuver people tail strike on. Tail strikes are not good. They're really bad for your airplane. Try not to do them, okay? So tail strike is, by the way, when the tail hits the ground, if that adds any visual. But during this side of things, we're going to want to slowly decrease that pressure we have as the aircraft becomes airborne, right? So when you're starting off, you got no airspeed, right? No nothing, right? You're not moving. Throttle comes in. You're moving forward. You're coming faster, right? You're pulling it back as that airspeed indicator is starting to rise up. You're starting to see numbers starting to go up. You're wanting to slowly. Your aircraft is starting to want to come up, and enter ground effect. So what you're going to do there is, so you don't tail strike, is slowly just kind of working it through. So this is a super feeling-based maneuver. The numbers for it change, meaning like how you come out, how does that change, stuff like that too. But most importantly, when you're graded by a DPE or you're graded for examinations and also just to be safe, number 1 thing they're grading you for is safety. So if you tail strike, you're hurting the airplane, you're going to fail. Another one too is keeping that nose off the ground. It's so important. And just feeling the balance of the aircraft. You should feel kind of lean back a little bit. And then when you're starting to feel like you're leaning forward, you're probably off the ground. And so in this area here, we're keeping that nose off. We're staying center line on the runway, so still using our rudders, which may be a little gooier than normal just because you don't have your nose straight on the ground. But you're feeling it there, right? So you're kind of keeping that balance beam with your aircraft, just kind of weighing it back and forth off the ground. Your yoke's full aft. Now we become airborne, right? Become airborne, pushing that yoke forward. We've avoided the tail strike by just being gentle and just lessening the yoke as much as needed in order to keep that aircraft pitch below roughly about 12 to 13 degrees. Nose up. So we've entered ground effect. Our goal is to not go above this and to definitely not go back into the runway, right? So it's much easier than you think it's going to be. So moving here, this is our area of kind of like our lowest performance, right? So you'll see a lot of students want to just keep climbing. You're not going to keep climbing, and in a soft field because you become airborne prior due to ground effect, right? So that means we have to stay within ground effect. So we're up, we're in, we're pushing in. So as we're moving along this area and we're building up our airspeed, let's say our target goal is right here, right? So this is what we will say our rotation out of ground effect area where we're wanting to continue out, right? This we're going to target. So if you're doing a obstacle, so say you have an obstacle like a tree over here or something like that area, just kind of out of the way, but you have plenty of runway because you did your calculations, right? You did your performance and you're within weight. But you see this tree here, you know you got to kind of climb out at a steeper angle. So we have our two airspeeds to our advantage. So we have our VY and our VX, right? So VY is going to be our best rate of climb, and then VX is going to be the best angle of climb. Remember that X has a lot of angles in it. Best angle is an easy way to remember that. So using these two here, I'm going to use the 172S, which is what we fly at Liberty as an example. So VY, we're looking for 74 knots. VX, we're looking for like 60. $62 knots. Cool. So 62 knots we're out for our VX. So a big thing to ask you, and then I'll give you an answer too, obviously. But which one would you rather use if you have an obstacle away? Are you wanting to use the VX, so like your best angle of climb, or are you wanting to use VY, which is just the best rate of time over a given period of time? Definitely going to be VX, right? So VX, we're wanting our best angle because slower airspeed, we can be more pitched up, we can get out there quicker. So in this area here, I have had DPEs tell me one of two different things. Like I had a DPE, I was doing it normal, so no obstacles in the way on a check ride actually. Well, obviously it was a DPE, but I was climbing out. And he said, what airspeed you climb out? I said, I climbed out at VY. And he said, isn't that kind of a waste of time? Which, yes, kind of. Both these airspeeds are definitely safe. You're good to go there. But I'm mostly going to target VY on a normal operation outside of things, just because it's more standard, right? And we want to keep things standard in the aviation. And so, moving out of here, we know we need to see VX, right? VX becomes our new quote-unquote rotational speed. So VX, we need to see that 62 knots. So seeing that 62 knots coming out here, that means we have to find a way to build up from, let's say you got into ground effect at 38 or 40 knots, just depending on what it is, day, conditions, stuff like that. You get into here, you have to build up from 40 knots over to 62 knots. So that means you got to stay in this tunnel here. And so your aircraft, when you are trimmed for takeoff and you're used to that full F position and you're in ground effect, your aircraft really wants to get out of ground effect, especially crossing like this line right here, which is like your rotational speed, so like your VR, so ours is 55 knots. So hitting there, this right here is hands down like the hardest part of the maneuver, is keeping the nose down until you're there, and then this side right here too. So because your aircraft is wanting to climb out, you have to counteract it and stay in ground effect. I like to think of ground effect kind of like a cushion between your aircraft and the runway, right? Because you don't really have any drag, well, you do have drag, but not a lot of drag, and then you have a lot of performance in that area. So that means you're gonna have to push that nose down, because your aircraft, if I could draw what your aircraft looks like, turn your nose up, it kind of looks like you come out here, imagine your airplane, this line is the plane, you're coming up here, as you're increasing airspeed, the angle is wanting to change, and then eventually, and don't entirely like push your nose down, but it's going to look like that throughout the maneuver. So you're pitched up because you just got out of ground effect. You've been having that yoke fully aft the entire time. Now you're in ground effect, you're moving in, and your aircraft, you're starting to feel it like wanting to pop out, right? So we're slowly working that yoke down to the point where we're actually pushing the nose down. And you'll notice that your aircraft just kind of like skids across the runway like this, right? It's very unnatural feeling. Promise you, as long as you're not like pushing that thing all the way down, you're gonna stay fine, you're gonna stay flat and level. Not flat, but you're gonna stay level with the runway. And so, moving it down, we've gotten here. So this part right here, a common mistake we see all the time that students make, and I know I made it in the beginning, especially when I was in private, was students like slingshot themselves out of ground effect, which don't do that. You're gonna like, you don't want to experience 3 Gs because you wanted to get out as soon as possible. Yes, it feels fun. It's not safe. Don't do it. And so this area right here, we want to ensure that we make a smooth transition leaving ground effect into our normal takeoff speed. So we're still using VX here, just because it's not standard. We're going to replace VX with VY if we're just doing normal and there's no obstacles in the way. But coming out of here, we're transitioning the aircraft's nose, right? And we're just gently bringing it out. So we're actually going to clear that tree much higher. Don't ever cut it that close, but I don't have more whiteboard this way, so could have thrown it from that way, but it's okay. So we're coming out, right? We see this line here, we're moving out of the maneuver slowly. I mean, it's like you're pushed down to when you see 62 on your airspeed indicator, just slowly work it back. I mean, that is quite literally the cadence you want to have. You don't, like a lot of students will just like pull like that and you'll feel the airplane shoot up out of ground effect. And it's not what we want, just a smooth, clean pull back, right? A big thing too, especially in the soft fields, is we see people with like students not keeping one hand on the throttle. So a big thing I do is my hand is constantly shaped like this. I'm showing you like, you know, right? Like constantly shaped like this when I'm flying out. And the reason for that too is the mixture and the throttle, I want those fully in the entire time. And like depending on if you're at like a high elevation airport or not, you might have your mixture out, then don't do that. But it's just a technique I've used because our airport's at 1,000 feet MSL. So one hand's on that yoke all the way out, and then moving in. And I've just got this hand pinned on the throttle because when you're moving out in ground effect and you're moving the airplane kind of decent like that, especially in takeoff area, that throttle sometimes will have a tendency to want to just tweak out, and we don't want it to come out. So keeping a hand on that throttle, keep it pushed in, and then keeping that yoke out. We want to just smoothly up and out, and that would be the whole maneuver, right? So a big thing I recommend doing is just chair flying this maneuver. I mean, it is so easy to chair fly. So like keeping your eyes closed, you've got your hand on the throttle, you got your feet on the rudders, and you've got the hand on the yoke, and I mean, just close your eyes and envision it, right? So you have that yoke fully out, your throttle's here, you're using it to taxi, you got cleared for takeoff, you're on the runway, throttle's in, mixture's in, right? And then flaps are 10 degrees for our aircraft. And from here, we're just taking off, right? We're using our rudders to steer currently. We're keeping center line that runway. And then now we've popped up, right? So we've gotten out of ground effect, not out of ground effect. We've gotten off the runway and we're entering ground effect. So going into that area, we're feeling it there. So we're slowly just kind of moving the yoke forward. And so just kind of letting that pressure off a little bit while it's sitting there so the nose can start coming down so it doesn't leave ground effect. Now we're here. Now we're exactly where we want to be. We're within that like one wing length. So now we're starting to push the yoke forward and keeping that throttle full as we're feeling the aircraft's wanting to come out of ground effect. We're watching our airspeed indicator and also watching in front of us outside because it is a VFR maneuver. Try your best not to keep your eyes glued on the inside. It's just not helpful. It's not going to be helpful for you when you're flying. And a lot of times your DPE, they don't like that. And if your eyes are inside too much on a VFR maneuver, they actually have the ability to fail you. So don't do that. So moving that yoke forward, now we've got it pinned, right? So we're pinned in that area and ground effect. I mean, just think about that, right? So, I mean, it really is, the whole maneuver is hands on the throttle, hands on the yoke, full aft, right? Rule number one. So until we've off the ground and ground effect, then you start to move that forward. But very simple. It's more of a feel-based maneuver. You will feel it wanting to do, feel the aircraft in the way of what it wants to do during this maneuver, and all this will come right into play. It'll make sense once you do it. It's hard to explain on a whiteboard, so I try my best. And this is what I've got for you for this. So the rules we have is just yoke full aft, stay inside ground effect. And then rule number 3 is do not rotate before you reach VX or VY, or like if you have an obstacle clearance speed you need to hit because that obstacle may be a lot closer than normal, then that might be another excuse. But do not rotate early. So we're not leaving ground effect. But rule number 3, biggest one, is do not slingshot out of ground effect. So don't pop that yoke because it can bend your wings. So do not slingshot. Now, if you are in like a super high performance aircraft that can handle like 8 or 9 Gs, yeah, go for it. But don't do that in like a 172 or whatever you're flying, like a Piper 140 or 180. It's not gonna help. So I hope this makes sense. This is why we have this, so for a check ride, and then also just for common use in general aviation, right? Or missions aviation, whatever you might be doing, where you'll be flying on a soccer field. So, simple maneuver. Go with your CFI, give it a couple shots, but try to, if I could have you remember anything in this maneuver, it's just these rules, and then remember these angles of where the aircraft is. Just up, 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 flat out, down, 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 right? Just staying in that same line. That's your aircraft's position. And that's all I really got for you. But a quick thing, last but not least, is when you're taxiing out, a big thing, especially for the private students that are wanting to get the private license, is do not forget your coordination and staying in the middle of the runway. Your rudder is huge in this maneuver. Keeping your right rudder in, right? And then also for the runway, just maintaining that center line. There is a video of a guy out there, and he was doing a soft field, and he was starting to come out of ground effect, and he kind of panicked. He just kind of let the yoke drop, and then he tried to pull it back out and recover the maneuver, but he wasn't staying coordinated on his rudders, and he panicked, and he slammed the rudder, and he went off and hit a building. So don't be that guy. Be this guy, right on the drawing, nice and safe out of there. It's not a sporty maneuver. Don't make it a sporty maneuver, but definitely practice it. It is very easy to do. Most students usually get it after like 4 or 5 tries. They can do it by themselves pretty thoroughly. So go for it. But that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah.